Today we're looking at 5 tips to quickly boost your IELTS writing score so that you can get Band 7, Band 8 or even Band 9 in the IELTS writing test. So, tip number 1, write your opinion in the introduction. To get a Band 7 or above in the IELTS writing test, it is recommended that you present a clear position throughout the response. This means that you should explain your position, which is your opinion, in the introduction and conclusion of your essay. Now, your introduction needs to do 2 things. Firstly, it should introduce the topic. This is where you paraphrase the question in your own words. It'll look something like this. Nowadays, an increasing number of stores are being replaced by e-commerce websites. Then, the next thing that you should do is to respond to the question. This is where you say what your opinion is. You can use a phrase like, "In my opinion," "I would argue," or "I believe." So you could say something like, "I believe that this is a positive development because it brings tremendous convenience to the consumer." Now, when you are writing your opinion, you need to make sure that it relates directly to the question you are being asked. Otherwise, the examiner might think that you have misunderstood the question and you'll get a much lower score in your writing test. Tip 2 is to develop your ideas with examples. By including examples for each of your ideas, you are showing the examiner that you have a well-developed response to the question with relevant, extended, and supported ideas. Now, when you give an example in your essay, use phrases like, "for example," "for instance," "such as," "one clear example is." These will make it very clear to the examiner that you have supported your ideas with examples. Now, there is a misconception in IELTS that you should invent facts and statistics that you have read in newspapers and academic journals. You don't need to do this. Instead, you should give examples from your knowledge and observations of the world. For example, you could say, "For instance, in the UK, many small brick and mortar stores have closed down but continue to operate online." In fact, giving examples from something that is happening in your country is one of the easiest ways to give a relevant example in IELTS. Tip 3, use linking words. Linking words are words like "firstly," "on the other hand," "however," "additionally," that kind of thing. We use them to organize our essays into logical sections. Here are some useful linking words you can use. For listing ideas, we can use "firstly," "first of all," "secondly," "thirdly," "lastly." For adding information, we can use "in addition," "additionally," "further," "furthermore," "moreover." For talking about results and consequence, we can use "consequently," "as a result," "therefore," "this leads to." To emphasize an idea, we can use "particularly," "in particular," and "especially." To introduce a contrasting idea, we can use "however," "nevertheless," "even though," "although," "despite," "in spite of," "by contrast," or "alternatively." And finally, we also have lots of useful linking words for expressing opinions, like "some people argue that," "supporters of something would argue that," "opponents of something would argue that," "in my opinion," "I feel," "I would argue," "in my view." Because linking words are so important, I have a full lesson dedicated to testing your knowledge of these useful linking words in my academic IELTS writing course. There will be a link to the course in the description below. Tip 4 is to learn how to use commas properly. Now, there are so many rules for how to use commas in English, and we're not going to go through them now. However, I found a great resource for helping you with your punctuation. Go to writer.com/punctuation checker and then paste your practice essays in, and it will show you all of the commas you have missed as well as any punctuation mistakes you've made. By paying attention to when you miss commas, soon enough your punctuation will have improved dramatically. Finally, tip number 5 is to learn these 15 useful words for IELTS essays. I've carefully selected these words and phrases from analysing high-level IELTS essays, and I've outlined all of them in this video. And don't forget, there's also a quiz at the end of the lesson to test your understanding. Now, if you want more help with your IELTS writing, then check out my IELTS writing course, which is full of strategies, tips, quizzes and model answers to help you get ready for your IELTS test. All the best, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye then.